morning, everyone.
Hey, good morning,
Good
Kathy. Good
morning. How are you
morning,
guys doing?
Roman. How's
Oh,
everybody's doing?
yeah, I've been doing great. I know you
Tim
guys
Horton, the
have.
Canadian
Yeah,
coffee shop.
yeah, yeah.
You
It's
know what
not
happened in Canada?
okay. It was a gift from a Canadian online client that I had. She sent me
Ah, okay.
coffee so we can have early morning sessions.
Yeah,
Excellent.
right. Yeah.
So everywhere Tim Horton opened in Canada, Dunkin' Donut closed. And now they are very scared because Tim Horton is coming in Canada. They are already in Michigan and some state bordering the border, especially on the east side. And Warren say, "Good morning, everybody."
Morning, Dale. Good morning. Dale just had surgery yesterday, so I'm glad. I hope you're feeling better.
I
Yeah.
hope it's not a brain surgery.
No, 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 no. So anyway, before we go anywhere, I wanted to bring everybody up to date about what's happened. Um, as of our show last week when we had Dr. Pisano on, which was really great, she has actually formally agreed now to do the Shelters Across America show, and we're going to be doing it twice a month. Picture Mom and Pet Productions will be producing it. It will be a show where she's going to have guests on, and then those guests that come on are ones that actually have a problem, and she'll be there with her panel to solve the problems. So it will be solution oriented show about shelters that are in distress and rescues that are in distress. So I really like that. And Roman, she's going to prevail upon you to come on the show to be an expert in some areas. So you'll be working together with her. So that'll be wonderful.
Awesome.
Okay.
Fantastic.
And Dale says he feels great.
Thank God.
So today's show is about, do dogs have morals and ethics? And what can we learn? And of course, what can we apply? And of course, we know that Roman is the one that is the expert. So he has provided us with some fabulous information. And I think
Mhm.
we'll start with what his first area is, which is the concept of morality is comprised of three distinct yet interrelated dimensions: moral reasoning, moral emotions, and moral conduct. So let's start with Roman. And if you want to, do you want me to put up that document that you have, Roman, or not?
Yeah, why not? I use this
Okay.
document when I have my online classes so people get a
Okay.
better understanding of what's going on.
Okay. So if we start with moral reasoning, what is that about?
Well, dogs have always a reason for doing something, and when we're working in a field with dogs and we have a dog in a house, we have certain expectations, what the dog should do and what the dog should not do, and we forget about the dogs do not have a logic the way we have, but they have, in order to function in their families and in order to function in their society, they have to have a moral compass in place, otherwise they would not be able to work correctly. What makes it different for a dog to attack another dog, and why not attack a dog who lives in the family? What makes that difference, right? And then we have other issues. For example, why would the dog love the cat that we have in the house, and why he hates the cat who is outside? And we can go very kind of simple and says, well, the dog is used to that cat and the dog is not used to the other cat. But the reality is, if a dog makes a distinction between family, friends, and enemies, or prey, it has to come through a process of understanding there's a difference between my cat and the other cat, even if they look the same, even if they are in a different place. Because even if his cat is outside, he will not trigger what makes the difference. There is a difference of relationship, and what makes a dog be in a relationship. A relationship means I understand who I am in a relationship to another species that is next to me, and we have a relationship. It needs a conscious understanding what's happening right now in that moment, and what is the standing of that relationship. Do we have a prey predator relationship? Do we have a sibling relationship? Do we have a parent? Are you okay? Hi there. Somebody makes noises. And
It was Gaetan.
oh no, it was my dog. And so there's very important for us to understand that the emotional lives of dogs have to come to a point that science is looking into it closer and try to understand what is the difference between a young dog and a small dog, a big dog, a dog who is an adolescent, and a senior dog. All these dogs have different behaviors around their environment. What makes that being so different? So I'm going to read something here that comes in from Stanley Cohen, who is a professor in animal science. So he says this data is important to our understanding of emotional lives of dogs because researchers have come to believe that the mind of a dog is roughly equivalent to that of a human. For those who think, hey, Roman is humanizing dogs, well, we have something in common there, and this is why we are the dog's best friend. We're supposed to be dog's best friends because dogs are the man's best friend. And it says, continues, this conclusion holds for most mental abilities, including emotions. Those where we can look to a human research to see what we might expect of a dog. Now we have, I'm going to show you that chart here that he created and is on his post.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? I think I have it here on your
Okay.
your graphic.
Yeah, you can scroll that down. So it shows, based on the science back then, that the dog basically 2.5 years is how the dog's emotional development stops. Now, what I see, however, is that dogs do have shame, dogs do have pride, and dogs do have guilt. Now, can we prove it emotionally? No, because we're coming in from a weird timeline of thinking the dog's everything that he does is to be programmed and the dog doesn't have a choice. So if we look closer into wolves, even if I don't like to compare wolves, but I compare them as predators and I compare them as social animals, they do have an understanding. If a dog does something that is not what is expected from his group, then him failing to provide that service to that group will likely cause him to be abandoned from that group.
Mm-hmm.
And so if he's not performing accordingly, he has a similar to our human shame, which means he needs to make amends and he needs to make up for it. And so we have these greeting interactions. If a dog doesn't feel confident that he is compliant to the rules, he's trying to gain benefits from going into a relationship with the highest ranking social wolf in their group. And dogs do the same thing. So
it's like peer pressure. It's
right?
like peer
Exactly.
pressure.
So we come home and the dog is super excited about things and the other dog feels guilty. And you're like, no, something happened. Why is that? Because people will say, well, the dog knows that it's going to get punished. Well, the reality is that not all people punish dogs for doing wrong things, but dogs feel shame for not being able to fix what they destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So in that case, if a dog destroys something in his stress, and then he's becoming to realization that I screwed up what I just had here and I cannot fix it, I have two options: to eat it, dig it, or hide it. Which eat it cannot do so much stuff, and I cannot hide it in under the carpet, and definitely I cannot dig it in the concrete. So therefore, here I am struggling with it, and mom would come home and will see it, and I don't know how to fix it.
And pretend I didn't do it.
Right, and then the dog hides from it, hides from the consequences that his mind on his trauma brain comes in. And I know, people would say like, that's just a conclusion. Well, observe it. Okay. Now, we can go down the road and says, well, science doesn't prove it. Well, let's open up a mind a little bit. Science, to prove something that is so intellectual, is very complicated because we can even prove similar things that we humans do. It's very long term, and there are conclusions and there are suggestions, and it's a never-ending story. However, we have a taboo here to overcome, which is dogs, morally, are not the same as humans. Humans are higher than dogs, and therefore, if we start the conversation about dogs have morals and ethics, and then they have emotions, then we have to reevaluate our situation, how we hold dogs in our home, and how we feed dogs, right? And how we shelter dogs, and how we treat dogs in prison or in shelters. And that goes into a dimension we will not be able to imagine, because that will have consequences in animal husbandry. So we need to take that in consideration, because we cannot just blame science not being able to prove it. There's a whole mechanism behind that that is not in best interest for that to be proven. I don't know if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Now,
Is dogs have a sense of discernment?
discernment.
Yes. Question.
Define what do you mean with discernment?
Well, the ability to choose from wrong to good.
Yes, they do have.
Yes.
They do have, because they compare always with consequences. Now, do they have an intellectual thinking of, what would God say about that? That's not going to happen.
No.
But he will see that, hey, it has been proven over a period of time. If I make that choice, I get that emotional consequence. And if I would make that choice, I make that confidence. Therefore, I have a choice to choose either or. And the dog has preferences.
And
This
that's
treat or
based,
that treat.
yeah, and based on what you just said, it seems to be based on previous experience
Right.
in the same
But
context.
yes,
Yes.
but there is also a genetical information that comes in where the dog is preoccupied based on genetics. So a
Hmm.
dog who has been from a generation, comes down from animal abuse, neglect, like slash facility breeding, then that dog will have a specific mindset program in the body for the body to
Hmm.
go into a fear response if something happens in the environment. Therefore, his trauma brain will guide him in a direction avoiding people,
Yeah.
avoiding dogs, avoiding stress at any
Yeah.
cost, right?
Hmm.
So it are dogs like humans? No. Okay, that doesn't make
Yeah.
them less or more. It
All
doesn't
right.
make
I
them better
understand.
than not. But in their context, in their environment they're living in considering the situations they're in, they're way more advanced than we are, because we're gonna not make it out there in the wilderness, and they still can make it in our cities.
Hmm.
Okay, let me ask you now on the morality issue. Do dogs instinctively know good from bad? Do they know that if they act bad, that it
Let
is bad?
let me ask you a weird question as a response. Now, we are totally okay to process animals for food, like cows, right? What about India? What, all of a sudden, we have social morals codes and ethics, and they are allowed and they are not. So, on one side, if we are in distress and our country is attacked, we have the right to kill people to protect us. On the other side, if you kill somebody to protect your property, you end up in jail. So there's a flexibility in our social morals and ethics. So are dogs in their family systems. There is a regulation in there. It depends on the education and the experience the elder dog has. Now, in breeding
Okay.
terms, we say it's the alpha male and the alpha female, which is the parent of those group of offsprings that live in a
Hmm.
complex family, up to 30 dogs usually, and that experience is what makes the rules. So rules, social rules, are placed by the individual dogs that are in that group that helps them survive. So you will see different rules in India, you will see different rules in Egypt, you will different rules in a group of loose dogs in California. I'm not saying that it's just a location, or dogs at the res. So we see, based on the environmental factors, those rules are being adjusted. And then we have the human rules that come on top of it. So if a dog feels totally okay to attack somebody who enters the place that he doesn't know, we see that as an aggression. We're going to put the dog down, right? On the same side, on the other side, the dog is being appreciated for doing exactly that.
I
Right?
have a very interesting point. You have a very interesting point, and that's make me think of my experience with. I mentioned that before. The therapist has a dog therapy for therapy, and the dog has a daughter, and she teach sign language to the daughter.
Yeah.
In the same regard, when you take the alpha male and alpha female from the generation point of view, and they pass from one to the other, some trait, how you say that,
Breed
character,
traits.
some, yeah, some aspect of their persona. Is that done only genetically, or is that done by transmission of knowledge? And I know it's a philosophic question that might be.
I feel from my observation that dogs do observe how we, or let's say, dogs observe how their secure attachment behaves around
Mm-hmm.
situations. So
Okay.
if we have a person, for example, being loud and yelling at the kids to be quiet and go up to the room and do their homework because they're coming to the school and be loud and everybody
Mm-hmm.
wants to be quiet, and mom responds to those kids in a certain way, the dog will imitate that because that he believes is the code.
Yep.
If kids do this and that, then mom will interfere. Therefore, now I need to help mom do the job so she cannot, because she should not be upset and
And
frustrated. So there is a homeostasis happening here where the dog doesn't want that escalation of stress by trying
Mhm.
to intervene before that stress happens.
So an example: a mom yell at the kid. The dog witness that and start barking at the kid.
Exactly.
Thank you. I have to thank you for what you're doing, Roman. Thank you, Catherine, for you. I'm not abandoning you. I have to travel,
Yeah.
so I will have to leave the show today. But it's a fascinating topic, and I'll be in Canada next week. I will synchronize. I'll find a way to link with you guys for the show next week.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds good.
So
Have a
I have
good
to
trip.
travel. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Keep
Okay.
up the good work. Keep
Mhm.
smiling, Kathy. You're
Uh,
beautiful.
oh, thanks. Okay. Bye bye,
Roman, you're
Gaetan.
no less beautiful.
Ah, come on.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Okay.
So
Okay. So,
Mark Perkov defines in his book Wild Justice, and please do take care of what read it. He says in particular, these behaviors, including altruism, tolerance, forgiveness, reciprocity, and fairness, are really evident in equalitarian way wolves and coyotes play with one another. And that's a big thing for a scientist to say and actually back it up with science.
right, right.
You know, and we see we have an evolution going on where dogs understand their rights and they try to confirm them, and as we as parents we need to kind of pay attention to those rights. And
Okay,
in
one thing you had put in your article, which I think is important, if we go back to Darwin's dogs
yeah,
and the way of thinking, nothing has really changed. We've just never known about
right,
what the dog originally. So that's what you're really referring to
right,
is yeah. So that's good.
yeah, because we need to see that in order for the dogs to evolve in a social setting, living together with another species in correlationship and surviving and having this, I don't know if any other animal has been so close to human than dogs. Okay, except of mosquitoes, I'm not going in that direction, but we see the dogs and humans share common space, beds, graves.
Yeah.
Right, in some cultures they were actually praised as gods, which is another story. But we have thousands of years of knowledge about dogs to the point where dogs have been put in a position higher than humans. And even if I remember right, there is a tribe, a Native American tribe, that actually in their story of evolution of creation, they say that first God created dogs and then he created humans, and because the first type of humans didn't treat the dogs well, he took them out and put new ones in. It takes a lot of story to come up with that story.
Yeah.
Right? I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's right or wrong, it's not me to judge, but we see if we look back in time and where we are now, we have not evolved the last 120 years. We
Hmm.
actually went downhill from there because we're coming from that moral ethical kind of misalignment of compass that we see now. Dogs um, be of service to humans and dogs have to comply, and now we put those idea of, I don't want even to say the word because they're going to be banned from Facebook, I guess, or social media, to go into that state of thinking we can kind of extend our rights of what we want to happen onto the dogs, and they have to be compliant, or we're going to put them down, or we're going
Hmm.
to abandon them, or we're going to punish them. This is not the right direction.
Well, one of the areas in your article or in your research, you have this play university, and what I got from it was what I got from it was what you're saying is that when dogs play, they play with intent and they play with purpose and
Hmm.
they play for a number of reasons. One reason is to be the top dog. Another reason is to know their position as to where they stand. And that's pretty much how humans react too. We
Yeah.
play
I
with
want to
intent.
I want to clarify the top dog. It's not the top dog with the meaning of dog,
Yeah.
the top dog like a boss. It's more about the social hierarchy. And we need to be very careful. If we talk about social dominance hierarchy, we're not talking about the dominance hierarchy, the back old thoughts of you have to be harder, stronger, more aggressive to the other dog. It's kind of like to dominate the rights that you can claim to the max, so you as an individual dog be more successful in finding a better mate, in securing resources of creating your own family. So we have to be very careful about how we put that in place. So we see play basically as evolution of aggression, let's call it this
Mhm.
way. So a dog, in order to survive, he needs to have a portion of aggression. It's kind of like, if we look at the term in this essence, if I would not be aggressive, I would never end up having a parking lot, because I would always leave the other guys go ahead of me. If I wouldn't be aggressive, I would not be able to find the cheapest price in the shop to
Yeah.
buy money things I can afford. I would never be able to apply for a job because I would take somebody else's job away. Okay, I'm
Oh.
not a saint. However, we have to see that aggression is a tool to surviving. And if a dog starts playing, is for him to manage that aggression so he can learn how to kill successfully in the game interactions without hurting anyone,
Mhm.
which there is already, again, a more unethical dynamic in there, because the dog needs to learn that I don't kill my brother because mom
Right.
would be upset about it, and we
Yeah,
don't do
right.
that. And
So
if the other
so
one feels attacked, then I have to kind of back off a little bit, but I need to still train my skills, so if I need it, I will be able to kill to survive.
okay, so part of that is really part of socialization too.
Oh yeah.
Because you can have a lot of dogs that have never been socialized and they immediately are stingy. Nothing is anybody else's.
Yeah.
So it really is good so there's morals, there's ethics, there's interaction, there's all of that.
Mhm.
So let me ask you, how to teach the dog and the caregiver? How do you teach them?
Well, we have to clarify first. This is a great question. First of all, we have to clarify that morals and ethics don't come pre-programmed. So I don't buy, and I don't adopt a dog who has moral and ethics already pre-programmed because the specific breed I choose. It's something that is being learned in a social setting. So it's our responsibility basically to teach the dog how to behave by, first of all, creating the relationship between me and the dog, so the dog identifies who I am in that relationship. And I am kind of like a surrogate parent. I'm kind of the parent representative. I behave like a original parent in the best and highest good for that particular dog. I'm consistent. I'm offering solutions. I'm helping the dog being successful in his skills. And I'm like giving the dog this room to explore and this room to experience. And I'm not taking that away from him through micromanaging. So he can play, he can do things, right? In that frame that I accept as an upper limit, and in that frame that I say as a social boundaries. So you cannot go next door and attack people. You're gonna stay in your frame, right? And I'm gonna tell you which is that frame, which is in that case our property line. And so we have to literally teach the dog the consequences and the ideology and the virtual ethics that we come into that area to place. Sorry, my English is a little bit. So we want to make sure that if we don't have that relationship in place, we will not be able to teach the dog these things. So priority is create a secure attachment relationship. The dog feels confident listening to you because you're consistent, because you make sense, because you dump things down to a language that everybody can understand, especially the dog. And the most important part, I'm able to listen to my dog's emotions. Because if I ignore my dog's emotions, why will he pay attention to my emotions? It should be a
Mhm.
two-way communication here, right? And definitely, if we come in from an angle, if you don't comply, I'm going to punish you. This is not a healthy relationship, and it will end up in a disaster at some point, because a dog all of a sudden chooses punishment and aggression to solve his problems. Make sense? Because he would
Yeah.
just imitate what we actually offer him as moral code. And so we
Well,
have to, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm going to add this in here because I know that you sent me this. I'm going to send you the link here to this, everyone. This is an article that Roman had about our animals, our dogs, moral agents, and I think that we're not going to go through the article, but the idea of what he's talking about will emphasize about it. Okay.
Mhm.
So
we have to become aware of what dogs' rights are, because if we are not compliant to the dog's needs and rights, then we will have a problem in our relationship. So I have a list here just not to miss anything. So
Okay.
dogs have the right of water and food and shelter and safety. So if you consider your dog being family, you have to secure the dog right of water, food, shelter, and safety, right? So mothers do that. They bring the puppy to the water, making sure they're safe. They bring the dog back to a safe place. They make sure they have food and make sure they have a shelter, right? The dog has the right of over their own body, and this is a big thing you guys need to be aware of, that you cannot just take advantage of your dog's curiosity and bypass consent. Just because you want the dog to be taken on a walk, because you want the dog to do this, the dog has to come from a consent. Can dogs have informed consent? Yes, they do. So we have to teach them the consequences of certain things so they can make their own choice whether or not they can do that. So what I do, for example, I teach him the collar on the harness. I teach him that if you agree upon taking that harness on your body, we will go out for a walk. Do you agree next time for a walk? And the dog is like, yeah, I'm excited about it. Okay. Now, these are important things. So do you agree upon going into your kennel? Do you agree upon eating that food? Right? Oh, I don't like that food. I feel upset. Right? Well, then we have to come up with a better plan. Maybe you like something else better. And then giving the dog those choices and then stick to them. Then the other thing we have to aware, the dog has the right to refuse. Refuse to meet people, refuse to get in the car. And then we cannot just force them if they have a reason to refuse that part. So I'm not saying that, oh, you cannot bring your dog to the vet because the dog doesn't want to get in the car. You have to understand the reason why the dog refuses and start working on that. The dog has the right to defend themselves, or they consider the family and property. So if I would be a police officer and I invade a house and I get into the house, I have to take in consideration that a dog, just a police officer, has the right to defend the law that is in that house, which means nobody stranger enters the house. Do I need to shoot the dog for that? No. Does the police officer have no right to get in the house? Yes. So this is the conflict that we have. We need to be aware of. Just because the dog attacked doesn't make the reasoning to shoot the dog if the dog is doing a job that he considers doing. Now, there are other reasons here that the dog officer has to wait for an animal control officer to come and take the dog into safety. That would be a plan, right? Maybe in these conditions where people know there is a dog likely to be there, maybe we should have already that in idea. I know people got the dog shot because officers went to the wrong house.
Right. Yeah.
Right? I know that service dogs being killed for protecting a person or trying to help a person who had an incident. Their service dog being killed. So I mean, these are extreme cases, but this is something to think about if we put laws in place. The dog are responsible to protect my territory from intruders and predators. Yes, the dog will see chickens to run freely in the house and will see raccoons and other animals running in my property, including the neighbor's cat, as intruders, and his job is to take care of it. But it's my responsibility also to teach the dog that that is not an option that is appreciated without punishment, right?
Right.
And that means I have to train my dog and have to socialize my dog and have to kind of clear that message that, hey, if I suggest you not to go out there and not to chase the cat, I would appreciate you not doing that. So, and I know people who says, well, appreciate, and what are you talking about? You cannot even talk to your dog. Yes, you can convey a message of appreciation to your dog. Yes, you can do that with positive reinforcement. Doesn't have to be always treats. And
Yeah.
sometimes just opening the door for the dog to go out gives the dog permission to do certain things that you don't want him to do. So we just have to be conscious of what we're doing that affects our dog's behavior, right? And then dogs are responsible to find food and water for themselves. Wink, wink for those people who attack their dogs for going to the garbage bin. Now, why the dog does it is the second question. What if the dog has a nutritional deficiency? Why the dog has eventually a digestive system? Maybe the dog is internally not healthy and he searches those resources to get to the garbage bin and get to the counter and get to the closet and get to, the kids' sandwiches. Yes, sometimes it's a learned behavior, but sometimes it's a behavior that comes in for medical conditions, underlying conditions. And then the dog are responsible to stay with the family and support with their abilities. This is a right. So I cannot just take away a dog because that will have an emotional effect on the dog. For simple reasons, I rehome my dog because I believe the dog doesn't get enough exercise. Well, who said the dog has to have enough exercise if the dog, all he wants to be a couch potato, hang out with you all the time, and says that is the center of his life?
Yeah.
Make sense? And
Yeah.
just because a dog doesn't have enough room in his property doesn't mean people cannot have that dog. I know rescues don't give dogs away if the dog doesn't have a certain size of property, which means, theoretically speaking, New York would not be able to adopt a dog.
Right. Yeah. Right.
On the other hand,
Exactly.
we have to be aware
But
that
they
dogs
got
do have.
parks and there's other things that
Right.
where you can take them.
However,
Right.
we need to understand that dogs have natural needs that needs to be fulfilled, which is including having proper exercise to get their body going, to have health being established. But I don't see 13 miles or 10 miles or 5 hours of walk is what the dog needs. If considering the dog only have a short period of time of being active, and mileage is not what the dog makes active.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Dogs don't make a lot of mileages. Yes, they play around, but in general, based on scientific observations and studies, in free roaming dogs, we see that dogs actually sleep a lot and they're active, but they're not running all the time and don't have backpacks running behind their back, and they're definitely not chasing cars all day long or bicycles, right? So it depends on the breed and the environment. But one thing is clear: the dogs, once they're triggered, they're 110% there, doing the job, and then they relax about it. So there is an on and off switch going on. But however, I think stress is something that you cannot just work off and train off. It's something that we have to address on the dog's environment. So we need to understand what the dog's environmental factors affect my dog's behavior and emotional state. Which means at some point we have to put family rules in place. So the kids cannot come in and yell and scream and the dog gets scared and car is in the corner, and then we put the dog in the crate for reacting to that. At the same time, rules apply for everyone. The dog cannot be jumping on the table and being punished while the kids are jumping on the chair and the table and the couch and not being punished for it. And punishment, I only see consequences, right? But from the same perspective, dog will see that injustice and complain about it. So punishment is not a physical punishment. Punishment is just a feedback for the person to say, hey, don't do that.
Right.
Okay, there's a consequence. So forgive my term, punishment.
So
now,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, we have also to come into understanding that we need to speak a common language. Just because dogs don't speak our language doesn't mean they speak, right? They speak in different terms. They speak with their body, they speak with their emotions, they speak with their intentions. So the dog's body language in relationship to the environment, in relationship to the person, all this is an idea, an expression of how the dog feels in that particular moment. So if the dog wags his tail, doesn't mean he's happy about the person. He may be happy protecting and guarding the house and will take that person down. So we need to see language in context and not just language, just a screenshot. So we need to see that three-dimensional language dogs have. And then we have to see that dogs have empathy, sympathy, and manners. And we have to be compliant to them. So if the dog shows empathy and sympathy to something that happens in his environment, doesn't mean he has to be punished for it. So Melinda Wenner had a very interesting play. It's called The Serious Need for Play, and a Scientific American Mind posted in 2009. And I think it says very clearly, let me read it up here. human children also behave this way when they play, for instance, taking turns overpowering each other in a monk wrestling match. So we see when dogs play with children and children play with dogs and dogs play with dogs and kids play with kids, we have to be kind of like understanding these are manners and these are ways to learn for them to learn, and we cannot just disconnect them.
Right.
Right? We need to understand that both need to learn how to cohabitate. And children and dogs take advantage of how we intervene as parents into that and how we kind of try to manage that and teach the dog and the children how do we address conflicts. In the same manner, dogs are smart enough to understand that that was not intended to do, and so that hurt me. And the consequence of hurting somebody else is being socially isolated.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't mean you have to go in the crate, but nobody will play with you, which means you're going to be alone and you don't like that. Do you want to do that, or you want to be social?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
so, yeah, I think responsibilities and consequences should be part of the training process, and it's just not obedience, and it's not just socialization. People think that socializing a dog means only meeting people and dogs, but it's not. It's basically teaching the dog
play dates,
social interactions, understanding consequences, recognizing what is a garbage bin, what can garbage bin make for a noise, what is a car, what is a stroller, what is a skateboard. He needs to learn all these things for him to make a right judgment. And yeah, to be honest, we are far away from this optimal thing.
Yeah, we sure are. We started the show with do dogs have morals and ethics? And you came up with a really wonderful thing, and I'm going to share this with everybody right now. Let me do this. This is the ethical dog, and I put a link to this. And what I really like is that it says, looking for the roots of human morality in the animal kingdom, focus on canines who know how to play fair. When I read that, I thought, boy, Roman sure knows his stuff, because that's such a really true statement. If you really think about how humans play versus how animals play, or dogs in particular, we're dirty players.
I feel honestly, and sorry, New York, I would say if dogs would take over Wall Street, we would be in a much better place.
Yeah, isn't that true? That's for sure.
Right? So I would suggest people to kind of read up some things. I would say play signals as punctuation, the structure of social play in canids from Mark Berkoff would be great. Animals at Play, Rules of Games, Mark Berkoff, Temple University Press, and Wild Justice, The Moral Lives of Animals, Mark Perkoff again, and Jessica Pierce, University of Chicago Press. That would be interesting books to read, or studies to read based on what we discuss here. Because, you can take what I'm saying for granted. I would not do that. Don't trust a trainer behaviorist. Drinking coffee in the morning from a Tim Hortons coffee mug. But I would like you to do your own research and always question what you're hearing. Don't take just things for granted. Just because somebody said so that looks convincing or sounds convincing doesn't mean that's the reality. My reality is not your reality, and your dog is not my dog. So I would say just take it with a grain of salt.
So what is it that you want people to know about morals and ethics of the dog, and what they can apply?
I would say the fact to understand that animals are sentient beings and dogs are sentient beings, and they have needs that need to be fulfilled, and they have emotions, and we need to take consideration whatever we do. To the dogs, we have a moral and ethical obligation to see animals as equal. And my point here is for people who and it's something I have very heavy in my heart the last couple of weeks. I see animals who do service for people being used with prong collars and choke collars and shock collars into compliance for service for animals, for service for people. And I think we should kind of like put that in our mindset and says, is that what we are here for? Is that what dogs are being bred for? Or are we just putting something in kind of like acceptable place that dogs can be used and forced into compliance because people feel the obligation and feel the need for the dogs to offer them a service, which is not an offering, it's basically forcing them into service.
Yeah.
And I had several arguments of people says, well, I'm a person and has special needs and I need a dog. Yes, you need a dog, but most of us people, and I'm putting myself there as a complex trauma survivor, doesn't give us the title or the right to abuse or use force, even if I don't want to see it. It's real reality, and
Yeah.
we have scientific evidence that the shock collar, prong collar, and choke collar does causes severe stress and trauma to the dog, and it's a welfare question to the dog. If my welfare is justified using those tools on dogs for me to feel better, feel safe, or feel supported.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
just put it out there for people just to think about that part. There are so many options and methods for so many years proceed to help people and dogs who have a solid relationship, dogs who are compliant, and because or they understand the rules, what they have to offer the service, and there is a feedback and emotional relationship behind that, and dogs love to offer service and even put their life at stake to save other animals and people from fires. Nobody trained them. Why would they do that? Because there is
Yeah. Right.
something there that we have to look into, that this is possible.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And just because I want to rescue dogs from a shelter and want to be placed for veterans and people with disabilities doesn't give me the right to use force to get them there, because I want to feel good about rescuing dogs and helping people in need.
Yeah.
We have to kind of put that aside and says, hey, the tools that you use to get from point A to point B, you have a moral and ethical obligation towards animals to be in the best interest for them. You are the representative of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Roman, this has been a fabulous show as always. Want to thank you very much. And I'm not sure what next week's show is going to be. Somehow I want to talk about censorship that has been going on about the most important issues when it comes to the handling of animals. So
Yep.
maybe we can address that. It
I
seems to
would
be a
say that's
real
kind of
hot
a good
topic.
time, because the um, Society of Animal Veterinary Animal Behaviorists basically clarified what they were talking about, how to treat animals and what is good and what is not good to treat
Hmm.
animals. And there's a confusion about what veterinarians can do to animals that is justified, and what trainers can do that is justified, and what sport can do that's justified, and what hunters can do that is justified. And we see there's a huge confusion. It's kind of like such a huge polarity, and not really seeing what is best for the dog's best interest, but we're always
Right.
coming from an angle what's for the person's best interest is.
Right.
Well, I
Right.
want to have my hunting game. I want to do this, and I want my dog to be successful sportsman, right? And I want my dog to be a good dog at the veterinary's office, and I want my dog to be compliant when I'm resting him and adopt him out. So we have all these ideas, and I think that's a great chapter to talk about.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Gaetan will be with us hopefully next week, if not the week after. Thanks for watching, folks.